ख़वातीन और हज़रात, वेलकम बैक टू अनदर एपिसोड ऑफ थॉट बिहाइंड थिंग्स। आज हमारे साथ एक बहुत ही खास मेहमान मौजूद हैं जिनका तारुफ कराने से पहले मैं आपको बता दूं कि ही इज़ फ्रॉम अमेरिका, सो वी विल बी हैविंग दिस कॉन्वर्सेशन एंटायरली इन इंग्लिश. So just a disclaimer, I know that people start coming and start commenting कि उर्दू में क्यों बात नहीं की, but he doesn't understand Urdu, so I can't speak in Urdu. But anyways, Jordan Olivas is with us today, and he is the co-founder and CEO of KistPay, which is Pakistan's first buy now pay later platform. Very, very interesting concept. We want to know more about it. Jordan, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And once again, you did a phenomenal job at our event that we held in Serena the other day with Hania there and everyone else. You just killed it. So thanks for walking me in. It's great to be back.
Thank you so much. Jordan, I'm going to start this conversation. We're trying to understand. I mean, this is a very weird imagery for Pakistan, right? Like there's an American. I mean, there are a lot of Americans in Pakistan, but generally they're working in very different industries, right?
Yeah.
There's an American who's looking to invest into Pakistan in terms of his time or money. I don't know what the modalities are, but definitely in terms of his time and effort. And he's starting a startup. And based on what I heard the other day, you said, you believe that this startup and a lot of other startups like this could potentially become the Pakistan's first unicorns in the next few years. And you have this passionate belief in the ecosystem. You have a passionate belief in what's happening in Pakistan and how this is going to sort of explode in the coming years. And we're going to get into that conversation, but trying to understand what your early life has been that actually brought you to Pakistan.
Yeah, it's a really interesting story. I mean, look, I don't come from a lot of money. I never went to Harvard or Stanford or worked at Facebook or Apple or Google or, made a bunch of money by selling my shares when my startup that I worked at went. I had none of that, right? Nothing fancy. I grew up small town, 3,000-4,000 people in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico, which is
really
not part of Mexico. I think a lot of people think that, but it's in between Arizona and Texas.
The only reason I know about it is Breaking Bad.
Yeah, that's what people say. It's a funny story. My little brother studied abroad while he was in college in Germany.
Right.
And they're like, "Oh, where are you from?" I'm from New Mexico. And they're like, "Oh, like Breaking Bad. You should come party with us." Yeah, he's like a celebrity. I'm like, "Oh, that's great. We're known for
for a drug show."
Yeah, it's funny. So my first house that I owned, it was like my senior year of college. When I bought it, I would always see a ton of movie signs around around my house, and I was like, "What movie is being filmed here?"
Yeah.
I never watched Breaking Bad until it was already done. Come to find out, it was like 2 blocks away from my house where they filmed like Walter White's house. And so,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, I grew up in a small little town, until I was about 12, 13, and then moved to I guess the big city of Albuquerque, maybe 1 million people with surrounding areas. And, once again, nothing special. My, poor household, paycheck to paycheck sort of thing. My idea growing up of going on vacation was going to stay in a hotel an hour away. Like that's what we did for our vacations,
Right.
But even from there, I went to a state school. I always found admiration in sales.
Right.
And I think the sales process for me was the connecting with new people. I really found enjoyment of, providing goods and services and being able to kind of be that mediator between two ideas and bring them together. And I think even today, when looking at our cap table who's invested in our company, we have competitors from the same field investing, and I really love that challenge. And I mean, even in middle school, I didn't get an allowance. My parents couldn't afford it, so I would go to the store, buy gum and candy, and I would resell it at school.
Really?
Yeah.
So you had that sort of entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, and I loved it, and I those days were just absolutely amazing. And I went to the University of New Mexico, and decided that I was going to stay in New Mexico. My idea of being successful back then, my bubble, right, was, if I'm the manager of a retail store, I've made it.
Really?
Right. That was my bubble, right? And that is like the level of success that I was like, yeah, man, that's just like, I'm top 1%. If I just do that, right? Yeah. But I think that's,
and I do understand that's for a lot of people, because it's basically you build your ideas based on what you consume, essentially, mm-hmm. right? It's experiences.
Product of your environment is what my dad always used to say. Right. And I think, look, in comparison to New Mexico, it's, Pakistan is an underdeveloped country. And when I look at like a lot of these people that I talk to, so smart, so passionate, they work so hard. And you look at the money being funneled into Pakistan, and it's starting to happen now. Like it's starting to blow up.
Right.
But it's because the bubble that people are in, they just can't flourish right as much as someone that growing up in Silicon Valley with their parents that both went to Harvard went to. They don't have that circle of influence. And so when I look at like my time in Pakistan, what makes me so excited, I was like, I was kind of like that, right? Like I had this bubble around me, and I see all these super talented people that are just the team that we're building is phenomenal, And so, look,
you're absolutely right. Like, there's a lot of people who have a lot of passion. It's just the direction that's sort of missing. They're just stuck in their silo for so long that everybody has this sort of negativity that nothing can happen.
Yep.
Except the variables are there, the ingredients are there. You just need the right recipe and sort of the right push.
Yep, and that's why I think Pakistan. I've said it before, right? Pakistan is the best market to be in right now because there's like this bubble that's like brewing, has been brewing for years with all this amazing talent, all this amazing experience. And now, like in the past 6 months, there's been more money invested into Pakistan than the past 3 years combined.
Right. And this is during COVID time. So that's
crazy,
cool.
Right? Yeah. It's an enabler, right?
Yeah.
It's an enabler to make Pakistan in a better country than it already is. When I look at my experiences, I worked at an automotive shop in college or in university, and then I went to work. I basically moved out to Texas back in 2013 or so. And basically I just kept grinding away. I start really low position. I switched a couple of jobs. I was always the youngest person in any position that I ever held. Pretty much, I think all except maybe one job. And, I basically did fintech the entire time. So my first company, I worked for a company called ARI Fleet, and it was a fleet management company, but I really found a lot of interest on the WEX and Voyager fuel cards, which are basically the debit cards that are used to manage fuel at pumps for big companies. So from there, I went and sold bill payment systems to government entities, utility companies. And after that, I went to work for a company that basically built fintech softwares.
What was the billing payment system called?
It was called Kubra. It was a company based out of Canada.
Right.
And so we did electronic bill payments, physical presentment. We did customer communications, SMS, voice, the whole 9 yards.
Very interesting.
Awesome company to work for. After that, went and worked for a company called RS Software, which was a software house that built payment systems. So we built payment gateways, did EMV certifications. We built card issuing systems. I got within 9 months, or maybe it's less than like 7 months, I was promoted to director of sales from a sales engineer. And so I got really entrenched in the details.
And how old are you?
At that time, I was 26. Something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, but you have to, like, if you want to succeed and you don't have the benefit of having a really rich family or having I didn't have any connections.
Yeah.
These are things that I just had to hustle and get out there and do, right? And it's funny because I'm not going to say who, but one of my inner circle people that I now have in Pakistan, he performed services for me. Very well respected in the community, and he said, when I thought, when I was gonna meet you, you're gonna be a lot older, and I thought, you're gonna just be kind of like some rich white kid, out of the U.S. who's just like, I got this extra money, I'm just gonna go blow it. But he's like
probably having a midlife crisis, and just going to
exactly. But I'm a minority. I'm a Latinx. I didn't grow up with a ton of money. I didn't go to Harvard. I didn't have a bunch of money to come in and just invest. I just said, I truly thought that this was the right market, the right time. I had the right people, coming back around that same time when I left that company, I decided I wanted to do something on the side, and I wanted to open a software house. And I'll come back to that. But a little bit before that, I went and worked for a company called Klarna.
Okay.
Which is the largest buy now pay later company.
Right.
At the time, they were worth about $3.1 billion.
That's in the U.S.?
They're actually Swedish based, but
Right.
They operate in multiple countries, including the U.S. At the time, they launched their Pay in 4 solution, which allows consumers to pay over time over 4 biweekly installments.
Right.
Brand new market. The market had never really seen that before. There was one other provider that we were competing with. And what was interesting was that this is, little I know, it would kind of set me on my path to truly start down the buy now pay later services.
Right.
Now that company is worth $45 billion.
Really? And how many
years?
2 years?
Yeah, 3 years. I think that was back 2018, something like that. So
Interesting.
I mean, they just blown up, right? And you have it was a phenomenal learning experience, and I had some amazing people I worked with. And from there, I started working at a company called Charge After, which was a buy now, pay later aggregator.
Right.
So I was brought on as vice president of sales. I built out the sales team, and essentially worked as, we didn't really compete with buy now, pay later companies. That wasn't our value proposition. We basically said, look, we're a technology company, plug in whoever you want. And we'll facilitate that. And because it was a good value prop. And then
essentially you were like B2B sales.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So, but I was still interacting with other buy now, pay later companies, right? And I got to see a wider spectrum.
Right.
So I eventually got to the point where, I kind of said, hey, why don't I do this on my own, right? And at that time, a few years prior to that, I had invested in a software house. That is where I found my co-founder, Saad, who's my co-founder at KissPay. And this is a good story. Right. I literally sent a random message to
Just 1 minute. For a lot of you guys who don't understand the context, buy now, pay later essentially means that you can buy any product and then you can break down your payments and be able to pay them maybe, once every 2 weeks or once every month or so on and so forth. We're going to get into that. So don't get confused. I just wanted to put that out there, but yes.
Yeah. So with my co-founder, Saad, I literally messaged a random person on Fiverr 3 years ago. And I was like, hey, do you want to start a software house together, focus on e-commerce and fintech? And he's like, sure.
Really?
And we built a software house, 15, 20 people. And here we are.
and how did you reach him? Like, were you already getting stuff done from him before this?
Yeah, no, it was just like literally like a random thing. I think he did like one thing before. And I was like, yeah, let's kind of do this. And like, it started off really slow, nothing crazy. And then, it kind of just popped up. It got fairly decent size. And, we really focused on, I basically was kind of like the investment arm, right?
Right.
But then I came to Pakistan last year. And
Interesting.
We were just driving around. I was, tell me about how credit cards work and debit cards work here and payments and all this. And I was like, do you have anything like Klarna? And sure enough, nothing. So I looked at the landscape and I said, look, I saw some of the regional players starting to operate. 5th largest population in the world, over 220 million people, extremely young population. And I said, why isn't anyone doing this? And sure enough, the reason being is because, low GDP per capita, low card penetration. But I looked at it a different way. You have this massive young population. You have this bubble starting to burst. When I talked to people, everyone was so passionate, right? And people love to shop here. They love to shop.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
it's not like people aren't shopping. It's just that the experience is different.
Exactly. And it gets overlooked because I feel like India kind of overshadows Pakistan sometimes unfairly.
Right.
And I was like, Pakistan's about to see this massive investment wave. And sure enough, my assumptions were right. And this year has just been wild, right? So we decided to go off, do this full time. We sold off the contracts, and we really thought we had something. We raised $1 million in our first conversation from the time we closed, it was about 6 weeks. And from the time we actually took our first investment, it took about 3 weeks to close $1 million.
Wow.
It was nuts. And we, on a very high valuation for Pakistan, 4.5 million pre-money on Pakistan. And, when I look at how things are progressing, as I mentioned right before the show, we were just chatting and we were talking in the room today at our office. So we knew we had so much growth coming. We in a matter of weeks, we've signed over 100 retailers, including Uniworth, including Philips, Xiaomi. You've got brands,
big celebrity brands like Shahid Afridi and Komal Rizvi.
Yeah, exactly. Several big celebrity brands. We find 3 celebrity brands.
Yeah.
And there's some other brands that are still confidential that are, market leaders. People are going to blow up when they see who we have coming. And, sure enough, I was having a meeting today in our office over in UBL, rent out the first floor, demolish the whole thing. And brand new office, open concept. it's beautiful, an absolute piece of art. And when we look at the room of people I was sitting in, we were having a meeting, and I was like, I didn't know any of you except for one person 2 months ago, right? And so now we have over 30 employees. We're going to hire another 20 or 30. We just literally can't keep up. There's Noshad, who is one of my leaders in the company. The only time he and I get to catch up is at past midnight. So we've had 3 midnight meetings at coffee shops in my apartment to like just like debrief because it's just like back to back to back.
Right.
And I really think we're onto something, and I think the number one focus for us is Pakistan.
Right.
We're a Pakistan first company. We are a Pakistan employer first, and we want to take care of the Pakistani consumer. Everything else will follow. I was doing an interview with someone the other day, a journalist, and he's like, well, how much profit do you think you're going to make off of this? And I was like, it's kind of irrelevant to me, right?
Yeah.
Like, we're well funded. We've got plenty of runway. We're signing big brands. People are excited to use us. We're signing hundreds, not thousands of consumers every single day. And if I focus on just taking care of the consumer,
the rest will follow.
Exactly.
And I think that's sort of every successful person that I've always sort of talked to, money has always been a byproduct, right? Like money comes as long as you're able to show that the problem that you're out to solve is being solved and people love it.
Yep.
It's only a matter of how much you plow in and how much you take out. That's what the accountants to do.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
So yeah, that's exciting. I want to talk a little bit more about this buy now pay later thing because again, a lot of people in Pakistan don't understand it. There's a lot of concept of is this going to be interest based? Is there going to be
Yep.
There's a social construct around interest as well. So people generally are wary of this idea that I can buy something and just sort of break it down. But also I know for a fact, I mean, someone from my office wanted to get an AC and he he was I believe it was for 95,000 and then he had to pay a 15,000 extra and break it down for 6 months.
Yeah, that's a shame.
And this is the first time that he's buying an AC for his house. So he was very excited, but he had to sort of put in a lot of extra money.
Yeah, to be honest, that's a real shame. I mean, it's taking money out of the everyday consumer, and it's money he can't spend elsewhere.
And I feel like it's a very inefficient system because it's not really required. It's just that the banks are so risk averse.
And it's not really, and I'll say it's not really the bank's fault. I mean, Pakistan is a risky place to do business.
Understandably, yeah.
Right? But what we're looking to do is to disrupt that. I mean, the banks are, they do provide a lot of jobs. They have thousands and thousands of branches and they've got lots of revenue streams, and I think the difference between us and a bank is that we move much faster.
Right.
We're a smaller company, right? But we rely on our banking partners to help us make us successful. Without our banking partners, we wouldn't be where we are today. And I will say people from the SECP, people from the banks have been more than welcoming. I mean, you always hear about in the international community, in Pakistan, there's terrorism and fraud and all this negative stuff that I've never once experienced. Does it happen? Sure, but it happens in the U.S.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
So I mean, one of the things that just what you mentioned a little earlier, the chicken and egg, right? So there is the problem in any new market. Whenever there's the system doesn't exist, there's going to be fraud. There's going to be all sorts of problems, and you go anywhere in the world. Obviously, if you're going to go to the US, you'll have to go 50 years in the past. But anywhere else, I mean, go to China, go to India, and the same problems have essentially existed. Even in Pakistan, there are a lot of logistics players. There's a lot of e-commerce players who've been trying to sort of disrupt the market. But again, just like with Amazon, for example, the Raz has the problem of these fake sellers selling fake stuff, and that sort of destroys the consumer trust, and then therefore the consumer then starts acting out. And then it's like the chicken and egg where you're able to create that sort of system. Use technology rather than focusing on the people's goodwill to be nice. You utilize technology and a lot of other things to create a system that is foolproof. In that particular context, first of all, how would you go about it? Because I know for a fact that, again, it is true that right now, because it's something so new, the first thing that people are going to do is want to try to hack the system.
Yeah, of course.
And the second question, particularly for me, would be because whenever I hear things like, loan, microfinance loans, for example, they're becoming a huge thing in Pakistan. There is the concept of credit scores. And I feel like that's been missing in Pakistan. Why? Because, I mean, for example, for me, if someone would take my profile, if I was in the US with the profile that I have, and I'm very proud of it, I would not have to sign more than 3 papers to get the loan that I want at a very good rate. But in Pakistan, I have to go through this excruciating process. And I do understand why that process exists because, the next person could be frauding them. But there is so much data already available that they could easily judge based on that whether I would be able to pay back or not. So do you think in terms of you trying to understand the fintech and the sort of banking system in Pakistan, how do you see the credit system?
I can spend 2 hours on this topic. Let's start with this. Let me break down what our product does. And I think it's going to provide you a lot of insight as to how I view this situation. So with our solution, we allow a consumer to pay in 4 monthly installments, interest-free, fee-free. I mean, there is no catch, no gimmick. They can pay on any debit card, credit card. It could be an international card. They can pay Chase, Bank of America, Citi, Bank Alpha, UBL, doesn't matter.
And this includes debit cards?
Includes debit cards, debit and credit.
And this is only for online shopping, or this will eventually go to retail as well?
We are piloting our first in-store with Philips.
Really?
Right with Eid. So
you could essentially go to Gul Ahmed, let's say, or any brand, for example, which would have partnered with you. And instead of giving them the credit card for the full payment, you could just break it down.
Costs is exactly. So Cost is going to be one of our first brands to do this, as well as Philips and Uniworth are going to be our
what's the first brand? Khas, right?
Khas, yeah. Good guys over there, by the way. I mean, just the team there is phenomenal. And so what happens is that with the credit card installments today, you can only do it on a credit card, right? And what it does is it holds the full amount on the card, and then it basically settles, what they call settlement, each month for the installment amount.
Right.
Okay. On a credit card, that's a great solution because you have a line of credit. It's not your money, right?
Right.
It's artificial. On a debit card, you can't do that because it's the same thing as spending the money.
Right.
Right. With our solution, we don't hold the full amount. We only authorize and settle the installment amount. So if it's a 10,000 rupee transaction, time of purchase, we take 2,500 rupees. 30 days later, we take another 2,500, and then the next month, another 25, and then the last 25 a month later. So 4 monthly installments, no interest, no fees. We don't charge late fees. We don't charge APRs, no interest. And the question always comes on how do you make money?
Yeah.
We charge the retailers.
Right.
Because for the retailers, a way for them to offer something that's differentiated in the marketplace. And I think one thing that's happened really, really quickly that I did not expect to happen for at least 12 months. Got an email the other day that said, hey, I purchased this item. It was defective. Give me a refund. They copied our support line on it. And I was like, hey, look, it's Eid. Please allow the retailer to respond. Give more than a day. Like, it's crazy busy right now. Yeah. But rest assured, no matter what happens, if you're not satisfied with your product and if they just don't respond or if they don't follow their own refund policies, we will refund you 100% of the item. No questions asked.
Interesting.
In addition, I invite you to come to our office. We want to show you what we're doing to make shopping better for consumers in Pakistan. Found out a few hours later, they didn't purchase with KissPay. They purchased with cash on delivery. So I emailed back and I said, I'm so sorry you didn't purchase with KissPay. You purchased with cash on delivery, but please, I'd still love for you to come into our office and see what we're doing. And he said, thank you so much. I would love to come see you. Next time in Islamabad, I'll be sure to call you. Thank you so much. So what's already happening? A consumer didn't even purchase with KissPay, saw KissPay at the point of checkout, and they said KissPay is a trusted brand.
Right.
They never even purchased with KissPay. But consumers are already trusting us. They know that if I see a brand that, offers KissPay trusts them. And if that brand doesn't operate according to their framework, they're not going to be on there, or I'm going to be taken care of. So, and this was not in the initial plan of what we were doing, right? But we are very quickly becoming a trusted brand for consumers.
Right.
To say KissPay authenticize the brands that they work with.
Right.
And this is just a weird phenomenon because in the US, I could order from a little tiny store, and if it's not working, 30 days refund policy, they'll refer to my card, no issue.
Right.
Right. So I think what we're starting to see is look, we're a payment method. That's not our main value proposition to retailers. For them, we say, look, we help you optimize your checkout. We reduce your cost, so on and so forth. But for consumers, what we're turning into is becoming a trust authority. And that's something I'm really proud of. I mean, I think that same email runs in my head multiple times since that happened. But, that's what we're focusing. Once again, it's focusing on the consumer. I was talking to one of the largest grocery chains in the country just before this podcast. And he's like, I saw your brand. I think it's super cool what you're doing. And, what we want to do is make sure that we are treating consumers correctly and we want to be able to help them afford to pay for groceries.
Right.
That's what we're going to do. And, soon we'll be able to add we're adding wallets as a repayment method. We're integrating into more point of sale checkouts to make it easier for consumers. But I think
so in terms of wallets, if I understand this correctly, EasyPesa or Jazz Cash wallets could potentially connect to your system as well.
Correct.
So the first part I do understand. In terms of the second part, in terms of the credit system, right? How do you sort of ensure that this person, you walk on the street, take 10 people, you wouldn't be able to tell which of these are able to repay this?
Yeah, that's kind of the secret sauce that makes our company so unique. We have a proprietary algorithm that we've developed in-house.
So there is something then that
there is.
Sort of gauges
it's
that.
very behind the scenes, right? So there was a good question the other day that came in that said, it was on Yum TV, and the host asked, well, if you don't use passwords, how do you secure the transaction from the consumers?
Right.
And so we simply said, well, look, we use a one-time password. Well, they're like, well, what if the phones get stolen? They get the OTP. It's like, even beyond that, there are things that we're doing in the background that consumers, are protected. At the end of the day, I could run into all the details, but don't want to sell the company, right?
Yeah, but the tech exists.
Yeah, exactly. And the way we're underwriting consumers, no one is doing it in Pakistan. No one. Like what the models that we're taking are things that are thought of organically from our team, from my experience, from my partner's experience, from our VP's experience, and it's great. Our loss rates, they're high,
right,
for the global market, but I think they're lower than what we expected. We've done a really good job of managing that. And look, I've done this in I don't know how many other markets and for multiple companies over several years. So, these use cases I understand, I know how they're working, and
it's essentially it's just going to be like tightening the screws here and there. Eventually the losses will simmer down. You basically learn on the go and just sort of fix those.
Exactly. We're transacting so quickly right now. Every day the transaction count is growing, and we haven't, just in terms of consumers coming on board, we basically haven't even gone live yet,
right.
And yet consumers are signing up saying this transaction count of saying this consumer signed up. I get a report every hour, and I think, in 1 hour, I think the highest was 300 and some odd consumers signed up in 1 hour, and it's just nuts. So it's really exciting. But, at the end of the day, we're using new tech. Once, as you mentioned earlier, we're using technology as a way to underwrite consumers, and we don't take CNIC.
Right.
Right. So to us, CNIC is not a valid way to underwrite consumers.
Right.
It's not relevant to us.
Right. Makes sense. Okay. So one of the things that have been slightly problematic in Pakistan, particularly when it comes to technology companies, is that there's a lot of focus on the sales and the marketing and basically everything except for the tech. And so you have some of the biggest brands, particularly in fintech, who have spent billions on marketing, and so they have the biggest market share. And then you use their product, and there'll be some very basic, these fundamental issues, in terms of the turnaround time, in terms of, just the app crashing every now and then, sometimes even, again, so the buy-in sort of, or the sort of getting into the system is very complicated. For example, if I would take an average fintech company, I can only tie myself to one number with one CNIC, and that's it. Right. So if I lose that SIM, in Pakistan, you're just basically just hopping SIMs all around in terms of numbers. If you've lost that SIM, you're done. You can't get another account on another SIM. Unless you sort of go to the, I don't know, probably have to go to the head office and sort of disconnect it. And the new guy who just bought that SIM cannot make an account on that SIM. So it's a very simple thing.
Yep.
But it's just, nobody just sat there and thought about how that sort of interpolarity of this entire thing will work. And so similarly, in terms of the app, the user experience has just never been the priority. And so how do you plan on solving that with Kispay? Because there are two players that I'm particularly very interested in, and I'll be very, very honest why I'm interested in that. One is SadaPay, and I believe their CEO is either American or French.
Yeah, Brandon.
He's an American.
Yeah, American. Yep.
Right, and so in the US, there is a huge concept of design thinking, and how do you sort of, I mean, 90% of your marketing is the user experience that
Yep.
if the experience is good, he's gonna sort of, with the word of mouth, he's gonna bring in enough signups.
Yeah.
Marketing is just on top of that. And that's something that we've been missing in Pakistan, particularly in the East. Even the Chinese model is, just take the product, hammer it enough times, and sort of people will start using it, and eventually, sort of grow beyond that. So is that a major part of your sort of DNA?
Yeah, I mean, look, first off, Brandon and Sadabeh have done a phenomenal job on their UI. I was talking to one of their C-level execs today, actually, and we're having lunch together, and I was just like, look, you guys have just nailed the UI. I mean, just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. For me, I take a different approach. I think our UI is pretty good.
Right.
Could always use some work. But for me, it's about iteration loops.
Right.
So I was sitting with a very senior advisor. This one particular person, she is a C-level exec at a major retailer. And I said, no, we've had 7 product iterations in the past week. She's like, what? Why? And I'm like, because that's the feedback we got.
Yeah.
Like, we are constantly iterating over and over and over and over and over and over again. And UI is very important. But like simple things, like, let me give you an example. We had I think I mentioned earlier, on our app, we have like a 4.3 out of 5-star rating, and we've got over 70 reviews now. I mean, we just launched this app like a week or 2 ago, and we've got thousands of downloads. And one of the feedback was like, oh, I think as I mentioned earlier, right? It's a scam. They don't have passwords. And it's like, that's the whole point. You're not supposed to have passwords. But what that told me was that we should explain that to consumers. We should be saying, hey, on the screen, we don't use passwords. We log you in with a one-time PIN.
Right.
Simple. Little tiny things like that, right? I got a 5-star review today. I check it like every 2 hours, like it's the stock market. I got this feedback, said, hey, we would love, right now, if I click on a store, it redirects out. It'd be great if you could keep it all in the app.
Right.
Super simple thing, easy to develop. But instead of spending, months designing and, critiquing,
that's essentially what I'm saying, right? Like, because right now the other products are so bureaucratic and corporate.
Bureaucratic. I love that. Yeah.
Right? Because, I mean, as a computer science major, there's been so many times there's a food delivery app, and it's tied down to my previous number, and I've lost that number now. And so I got a new number, and I said, listen, I got like an insane history of food delivery. I mean, for almost 2 years, I've been delivering breakfast, lunch, and dinner from your app. I need that history, right? And so because of that history, I need you to transfer me to my new number. And they're like, oh, it's not possible. It's locked out. And I know for a fact it's a query. It's an SQL query.
Yeah, we've already believe it or not, we've actually already done that for a consumer. They said literally the exact same scenario, and it was simple. It was like, okay, we're gonna do an OTP on the new number.
Yeah,
we need just to authenticate one document, and we didn't say come into our bank, our brand,
give us your fingerprint.
Yeah, it was just like, because we have other things that we're doing behind the scenes to authenticate all that, right?
Right.
And as you mentioned, the precipice of what you said earlier, using technology to ease the consumer burden and manage risk appropriately. That's what we're doing.
That's awesome. That's exciting. I'd like to sort of just pause the buy now, pay later for a bit and sort of get into the Pakistan bit. We talked about that earlier as well. In terms of the young people, and how old are you right now?
31.
31, right? So you're millennial essentially.
Yep.
And in terms of the Gen Z, you probably have been working with that 21, 22
Several of our employees are part of
fresh
Gen Z,
graduates, and how do you find that particular generation in terms of how you see them in the US versus how they are in Pakistan?
Probably, one of my best employees is a Gen Z. I mean, it freaks me out that she only has the amount of experience that she has. She's amazing. And, her name is Zara. I think she might be on the edge of millennial Gen Z, but she's just like gets things, right? I don't have to explain things to her 10 times. And I think one of the things, being a millennial, I grew up with a computer, but it was back, floppy disk, I grew up with CDs and then MP3.
Right.
And, I was probably in high school when I got my first, MP3 player.
Right.
They kind of grew up that from the get-go. And so their minds are just it's so funny. My sister, I have 3 siblings, and 2 of them are Gen Z. and just the way that their minds think is just so different, right? And you would never think that.
Yeah.
But I find it really interesting because I think it comes down to content. I think that's the one thing that I find is the biggest difference, because I think the way people consume content defines a lot about who they are, what they do, what they like, not just the content that they're delivering, but how their minds think. For me, I'm constantly reading, I'm constantly listening to podcasts. I don't really, watch, a ton of just regular television. And for me, everything is kind of like an afterthought, not an afterthought, but like I love consuming data and see what floats to the top.
Right.
What I've noticed with this Gen Z is like, I feel like they consume the same amount of content as I do, but they retain all of it. Like it's so interesting, right? Like and I think we were talking before, I was like, I love talking to people, but like I have everyone's like, you need to make a new Instagram and like, become a celebrity. Like everyone loves talking to you. I had somebody come to me on the side of the street for the first time ever, like, I saw you on TV, and I was like, what? They had a mask on.
You just walked in, and one of my employees, he just took out this Profit magazine, and he was like, is this the same guy? I was like, yes, that is the same guy. Yeah. So I mean, you're getting famous, and you're on Profit magazine, you're on Hum TV, and hopefully very very soon a lot of other places. So I think the celebrity brand is coming.
It is. It's so funny because I love making like this. I love this, like this casual chat, and we're talking about things that I really love. But consumers like Gen Z, I can't make Instagram content to save my life. I don't know why, but it's just not in me. But anyways, going back to kind of like Pakistan and Gen Z, the Pakistan Gen Z, I hope no one at home is listening to this. There's way more impressive than the U.S. Gen Z. But like, and I'm serious, right? Like it comes back to that bubble up, right? I think you had what I would consider even my parents' generation, the equivalent of Pakistan, economic hard times. They built a lot of great baseline, kind of both institutional, even like, family wealth, and, kind of try to build somewhat of a legacy.
Right. And that sort of provided that stability, essentially, that was required.
Exactly. And then I feel like our generation kind of somewhat capitalized on it, but I feel like this is Gen Z, like we're about to hire 20 new people. All of them are going to be fresh out of university. And I think it's going to be just amazing. Like I'm kind of scared, but kind of excited,
Yeah, because in Pakistan right now, I was reading a study the other day, 11 to 29-year-olds are 49%. That's essentially half of your population.
Yep.
And for any company which has a vision, a long-term vision, they're essentially looking at, that's the number to look at.
Yep.
That is basically the biggest driver, rather than, waiting for that 40-year-old to convert from his credit card or his, sort of retail experience to online or sort of a new disruptive experience. It's this young population that is going to be sort of born into it.
Yep.
And so it's fundamentally important that they are a part of the actual design and implementation of a lot of what happens behind the scenes, because what's happening in Pakistan is, a lot of times these products are failing because you have these sort of industry veterans who definitely have all the experience and they're well respected, but they sort of miss out on the mentality of the younger audience, which essentially is the one who's going to be the early adopter.
Yep. You nailed it straight on the head, and I think a lot of what we do and what we focus on as a company is speed. So we have 4 pillars that drive our company. That's in every one of our decks, and the first one is speed.
Right.
Today I loved it. I mean, everyone's walking in and out of my office. We have all glass windows on the offices.
Right.
And just literally riding in one day all the way across. And people are just running in and out, new ideas. And just like, there's just like organic energy that happens. And like, you kind of get that in the US. I've worked for startups and like you do some cool stuff like that. But like, this was just like, you can't explain it. Like Pakistanis have such passion. And I kind of like, for being Latinx, I feel like Hispanics have a lot of that same type of drive, like very family oriented. A lot of what we do revolves around food and drink, chai, right? Right. Very passionate in everything that Latinx people do. It's a lot of the same cultural influences that Pakistanis. I think that's why I gel so well here. And even, I've got black hair and slightly dark skin. So, I mean, I feel a little, I've kind of fit in a little bit. But I mean, it's...
Yeah, I mean, if you could speak better Urdu, you would easily be a Pathan from KPK.
Yeah, I've heard that multiple times. But I mean, I think that's why, like, I gel so well, like, with, like, my team and just, like, if they feel like family. Like, I mean, I've known some of these people for weeks. Even, like, my executive assistant, Abigail, I mean... she feels like a sister to me. Like she's like, we just click. Like everyone on our team just clicks so well. And, when we talk about, kind of, there's this image of women, I think, of what foreigners think of Pakistani women, right? Just like super quiet, super just reserved.
Yeah.
I'm sure there are a lot like that, right? Of course. Like all the women in our office are strong, independent women who have they're probably my best employees.
Yeah.
Like they're so just like, once they you drive this passion with intelligence, with this like whatever they grew up with.
I think so.
So amazing.
That's a very interesting point, because this is something that I've experienced in my office as well. The best employees, not saying to the boys, but the girls are doing phenomenally well. And I think one of the reasons why is because a lot of the times the boys are grown up with this idea that you have to pay the bills. And the girls are grown up with the idea that, it's okay if you don't work. So when the girls are working, they're working for a passion. They're working for a drive. They don't really care about the bottom line. Yeah. They're not focused on the monthly payment. They're focused on the problem that they want to solve. And they're like, okay, listen, like we are 100% on this situation that we have to do. Whereas the boys are so anxious about this, am I going to pay the bills? I don't really care what my delivery is as long as my bills are covered.
Yep.
And so I feel like that there is a discrepancy there. But in terms of, alternatively, a lot of these women are now, there's a huge population of women who now are living in urban spaces, are progressive and have progressive families. But then there are a certain amount of women who who are the first generation who are fighting from their families and saying, listen, I got to work. I studied all of this not to put in a library. And so if they're taking that fight, then they're ensuring that delivery as well. They want to get that gratitude of changing the system, doing something for the world.
Yep. And it's funny, like I don't feel like they're doing anything dramatic, like trying to like topple the system. There's like, I just want a fair chance at it, right?
Yeah.
I've got 3 of our directors are female.
Right.
And I love it. Like, they're great. And look, being from an impoverished household growing up, being a minority growing up, I know what it's like, to kind of see like someone else have the upper foot. We do small things. Look, we're not Microsoft. We're not a multi-billion-dollar company. We're a startup. But even small things like we do a annual, female empowerment scholarship where we pay 50% of the tuition for one of our female employees for the remainder of their program.
Right.
And even like small things, like doesn't cost us like, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's like these things make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think, look, no matter what happens, even when this company is, a $100 million company, a $500 million company, a $1 billion company, a unicorn, I think I'm going to stay doing something in Pakistan, like whether it be working for another company, advising startups, just vacationing here. It's a cool country. And I've said it before on other shows where more Americans need to come to Pakistan. It's a cool place. And look, it's like anything else. I wouldn't go to a back alley in Chicago in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah,
Use common sense, right? Actually, Chicago is more dangerous than Islamabad.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, statistically, it is.
Absolutely. Right? I think this Pakistan gets a bad rep, but again, I feel like that's going to change. A lot of times, when Indonesia sort of opened up and India opened up, people had these sort of misconceptions, and that's where the boom happened. That's where, when you said, it's sort of like it's on the cusp of this sort of disruption.
Yep.
Because of the fact that there are so many misconceptions about this country. If the misconceptions were actually true, you'd be like, okay, maybe it might work, maybe it wouldn't.
Yep.
But just because there is so much discrepancy between how it's viewed outside and what's actually going on inside, it's only a matter of time, and those sort of connect. Yep. I want to talk a little bit about this. You mentioned unicorn, and you mentioned the fact that there's going to be huge money there, and growth and productivity and all of those things. What would be the variables, or what's the nuance behind that? Okay, sure. So there's, statistically, there are some basic indicators. We have a huge youth population. We have a growing middle class. Our young are very urban. They're very they're on the internet. There are 90 million consumers on the internet. Sure, everybody's heard those stats. But in terms of, probably when you were thinking about this, it's not an easy decision.
Yep.
If I have to move out of Islamabad to Karachi, for example, that'd not be an easy decision. You moving all the way from the US to Pakistan, your friends probably were like, listen, you're nuts.
No comment.
You're leaving a good, comfortable job. What really sort of drove you and said, listen, I feel like this could really work?
It's, minus the economic factors, right, of, it being successful, I kind of saw a point to where there was this, I think it was the passion, as I mentioned earlier, right? Like every Pakistani that I interact with is just super passionate. And I looked at this market. I mean, I said minus the economic factors of the population and the growth, blah, 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 blah. I looked at it and I said, we could grow a multi-thousand employee company to be $1 billion company. And, for those of you who, most of you probably are aware because they follow your show, but a unicorn is $1 billion company. I said, we could build one of Pakistan's first startup, unicorn.
Right.
Because...
And for those of you who are just about to comment saying there is already a unicorn, those are mostly based out of Dubai. So this is essentially talking about completely made in Pakistan for the Pakistanis company.
Yep, made in Pakistan by Pakistanis for Pakistanis, right? Look, Cream, phenomenal, amazing company culture, amazing company. What their innovation with like the drones, just amazing. I follow their stuff all the time, but they were not made in Pakistan, right? And look, I think that if you get people behind a good cause that's providing good jobs, not 10,000 rupee a month job, I'm talking good paying, even right out of university, 40, 50, 60,000 rupee jobs, you give them a goal to work for and you kind of gather all this passion behind them, sky's the limit.
Right.
Forgetting the Pakistani market, just for a second, like from an economic and operational perspective, we could go to other countries.
Yeah.
Why not? And why hire a completely different team over there? I mean, hire, maybe a few salespeople, blah, blah, some remote office, but have everything based out of Pakistan. There's good development talent. There's good project management talent. There's good sales talent. There's good marketing talent. And you get a lot of people saying, oh, well, I don't like to offshore my stuff because it always comes back bad. And you know what? What I learned, it's not that the talent in Pakistan is bad. It's that the requirements given from outsiders aren't correct. And they are expecting something. They don't ever communicate that to Pakistanis or really anyone working offshore.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating because it's like, if you actually give them clear requirements, they would be able to deliver on it. And I'll tell you, our team, we have a small development team of only a few people, and what they built is leaps and bounds beyond what any other American company can build in the short amount of time that we've done. And you take that passion, once we have 100 developers,
the sky's the limit, yeah.
We've been operating a half team, we've signed over 100 retailers. But people are throwing investment money at us. We have global entities like Philips, like Xiaomi, a number of other ones I wish I could disclose, are saying, we want to work with you. They want to work with a Pakistani company. They want to invest in a Pakistani company. And I said, when I talk to investors and I say, hey, they say, well, when you expand, you should really get, developers in wherever. Why?
Yeah.
Why? Maybe one to make a localization of the UI maybe, but why do we need a whole separate team? There's plenty of good talent here.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, true. Jordan, we're at the 50-minute mark, so I'm just going to move on to my final question. And this is something that I generally ask to all of my Pakistani guests. But, since you're basing 80% out of Pakistan, and because you have a certain sort of vision, before the question, I'd like to ask, what are all the countries that you've been to?
Oh, okay. So Pakistan, US, Mexico, Canada. I've been Sweden, UK, Qatar, all over. I've, not been in India, but I've done work, for the Indian economy. I've done a little bit of everything, but mostly developed regions. I'll say,
most of these countries that you went for work, you don't take a lot of vacations, I believe.
No, I don't. It's all been for work,
You gotta go to Maldives and Thailand and Greece.
No, I don't vacation much. I like working. I love building stuff.
Yeah.
I love what we're doing right here, and what I was doing all day today is
that's food for your soul, huh?
I love it, man. I'm terrible at sports. I can't play the guitar. I have no other talents except for building businesses. And this is, look, like I said, I could have started a business anywhere. I could have started one in the US. I could have started one in Mexico. It would have made more sense, or South America would have made more sense for me. I came here on purpose. This wasn't by chance. I came here to do something, and I'm going to do it.
Yeah, 100%. I love the energy. I love the passion. And one of the things that I always say, US is amazing. I have a lot of family there as well. But it's a developed country, and there are very few problems to solve. Pakistan, the reason for Pakistan works is because people would say, why are you in this country? There's so many problems. Why would you invest? Why would you do business here? My answer is always, the fact that there are problems is what excites me, that I can solve them and make money out of it, not just for myself, but for the economy. And I think it's that sort of approach that I've talked to every successful person, and they're just like, they feel like Pakistan is the land of opportunities right now, because it has to be it is one country that has to be taken from underdeveloped or developing to sort of developed, and that's whoever becomes part of that change essentially, reap the reward. But so the question essentially is, how do you see Pakistan in 20, 50, 30 years from now? So you're here, you're investing, and so now you see this country very vibrant, full of passion. I would like to have two scenarios of, best case scenario and okay case scenario, worst case scenario, of where you think this country could go.
I think it could be very much, I think most of the major cities could end up like Dubai, right? I mean, I think Pakistan will keep more of its culture, right, as it grows. But from an infrastructure perspective, you could very well see that. I mean, Pakistan's going to be a pretty wealthy country in 25, 30 years. I mean, it makes sense, right? Break it down. The U.S. was successful because there was innovation. Right now, what the Pakistani government doing is helping foster innovation. They're offering grants to startups. They are passing legislation to make it easier for people to operate. They are, the prime minister is constantly doing some sort of infrastructure work. The government is setting up the infrastructure for Pakistan to scale. Then you couple that with the investment that's coming in from outside, and it's just starting. Like, it's just starting. We're going to see 10x the amount of investment next year. I can almost guarantee it. You then have all this passionate, passion that's being built up. You have a young population. You have all this young population that's tech enabled with 4G. They're about to launch 5G in the country, which means there's going to be better access to people. I was at my first Pakistani wedding this weekend.
Oh, how was that?
That was amazing. A little bit long. In the U.S., like one day and done, right? But it was actually a lot of fun. I really, really enjoyed it.
Did you see the glamour in a Pakistani wedding?
Oh my gosh! Especially the last day, the hall was like 4 stories tall. It was amazing. I was blown away, and it was for my it was just a phenomenal experience, and people were like treat me like family.
Yeah,
it was so cool. It's so welcoming, and you bring this passion and compassion that people have. It's gonna be when people give Pakistan a chance. It's gonna be what's happened to me. I said, I think this is the right country, and I took a dive in, and I was like, holy cow, this is amazing. Right. And I think that's going to happen. Look, and I think in the okay scenario, you have better infrastructure. People have better quality of life, may not be as rich of a country. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Right. I think regardless, Pakistan is going to be leaps and bounds from where it is today in 25, 30 years. People won't recognize it. And, I think one of the things I'm really hoping for is that I feel like sometimes the U.S. has lost some of its initial culture. As is expanded, and it happens when you grow. I think Pakistan is going to retain a lot of its culture, and I hope it does, because I think it's such a unique. It's similar to a lot of regional cultures, but there's just so many things that are just unique that you just pick up on. That when I'm driving down the road and I'm at a stoplight, and just small little things like the way people sell art and the way that people. If people drove like the way they do in Pakistan and the U.S., it would be chaos. They should send Pakistanis to teach defensive driving courses in the U.S. It's like organized chaos, and it's just so cool, right? People are once again, it's that compassion. Someone walks down the middle of the road, everything stops. No one's hurt. I haven't seen a single car accident. In the U.S., that person be run over, no questions asked. And so I think when you bring this outside investment. You bring this passion, this just natural level of intelligence, this hardworking, this infrastructure starting to be built. Pakistan's going to be like a utopia, I think. It's going to be cool. And I'm going to be able to say, look, I was there at the start. I'm really excited for it.
Jordan, this was exciting. This was a humbling experience, to be honest. To be able to, this is something that I believe, this is something a lot of my guests believe, but people in Pakistan, unfortunately, we've been in an echo chamber for so long, primarily because of the disconnect from the discourse. And I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that you'll be taking a lot of these conversations back to your home as well, and hopefully bringing a lot of other people to witness the culture, to experience the hospitality and the compassion and the passion of the people of Pakistan. Thank you so much for all the insight that you gave us, and I wish you all the very best. For all of you guys, do check out Kist Pay. The website is kisspay.com.
Yeah, QISSTPAY.com, and we also have our app on the Google Play and Apple Store.
Yeah, check it out. See what they have to offer. Give us your feedback on the comment section. And also, I hope, inshallah, that Kisspay is.
I got Tige and inshallah. Yeah, and salam.
So I hope it's a unicorn as soon as possible. When you're a billionaire, don't forget me.
I won't. Thanks again.
But thank you so much for being part of the show. And for all of you guys, thank you so much for watching. अगर आपको ये एपिसोड पसंद आई हो तो अपने दोस्तों के साथ जरूर शेयर करिएगा. हमारी व्यूअरशिप बढ़ेगी, एंगेजमेंट बढ़ेगी. इसी के साथ साथ यूट्यूब वाले लाइक का बटन दबाएंगे, ज़्यादा लोगों तक हमारी कॉन्वर्सेशन पहुंचेगी. ऑडियो प्लेटफॉर्म्स वाले सब्सक्राइब का बटन दबाएंगे तो आने वाले एपिसोड की नोटिफिकेशन मिलेगी. नीचे दी गई लिंक पर क्लिक करेंगे तो फेसबुक की आप TBT कम्युनिटी ज्वाइन कर सकते हैं. यहाँ पर डिफरेंट फीडबैक भी देते हैं, डिफरेंट आपकी गेस्ट रिकमेंडेशन भी लेते हैं. इसी के साथ साथ हमारे लेफ्ट या राइट साइड के ऊपर जैज़ कैश और ईजी पैसा का अकाउंट आ रहा है. इफ़ यू वांट टू सपोर्ट द पॉडकास्ट, आप वहाँ पर पैसे भी ट्रांसफ़र कर सकते हैं. बट उसका कोई प्रॉब्लम आ रहा है आजकल, पेरेंट लिमिट है वीकली. आई एम गोना सॉर्ट दैट आउट स्ट्रेट अप आफ्टर ईद. बट एनीवेज, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर वॉचिंग. दिस वाज Muzamil Hasan. You were watching Thought Behind Things. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.